guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at @itchjacino. And if you feel like it, for all of your Arsenal needs, what I'd love you guys to do is follow She Knows Arsenal on Instagram. It's at She Knows Arsenal TV. I'm trying to do a lot of work on there. So if you guys feel like it and you guys like Instagram, you like to see more visual content, please follow us on there as well. Now, on today's She Knows Arsenal Daily, what we're going to be talking about is Ramsdale's Player of the Month nomination. He's been nominated for it. There's some other really strong contenders in there as well. And I think the Arsenal fan base should go ham and vote as much as possible for our boy. We all know that Salah has been having a crazy season, but at the same time, so is Ramsdale. And we'll talk about, his chances of winning it and a little bit more about how much he's revolutionized kind of Arsenal, even just from a feeling standpoint. It's not even just the statistics. It's actually insane how much different the fans feel, the Emirates feels, our games feel, just with Ramsdale as a new part of the Arsenal family. We're also going to talk about whether or not we feel like ESR and Ben White were wrongfully not added into the England squad. It was met with a lot of opposition from the Arsenal fan base, and I feel like we're valid for feeling like our players that are playing really well should be added into these squads, right? And so we'll talk about it, and we'll talk about them separately because I think both situations are a little bit different. But nevertheless, I feel like the Arsenal fan base is usually silenced by other people. It's like, how dare Arsenal fans feel like their players deserve to be a part of things? And they should. They should. Like, some of the players that get added into these squads are nowhere near as good as ours. And I feel like maybe if we're a little bit louder, maybe things will change, but we can talk about that a little bit. And Saka, he's still in the England squad despite maybe a drop in form. And I think that says a lot about how Southgate sees him. So we'll talk about that as well. And without further ado, I'm going to bring in my panel for today. I have Souls and George. Hey, guys.
Hey, how are you?
Good. So, was watching a little bit of the footy today and been watching a lot, to be fair, like since, watching Champions League the last 2 days and then watching Europa League today. And I can't lie, I'm missing watching Arsenal midweek. I'm feeling a little bit like there's not enough Arsenal to go around. We're just only really there for the Premier League games at the weekend. Are you guys feeling a little bit of withdrawal from not being able to watch Arsenal midweek? I mean, this has never happened. I've never felt this way. And I never thought I'd miss the Europa League, but I do miss a little bit of that. Oh, I miss that. What do you think, George?
It's kind of nice. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I get to live off some of the good performances, ride that throughout the week. Get caught up on some extra scouting, watch some other games, just not anxiety ridden. It's great for my health. But no, like, I mean, yeah, you do miss whenever your team plays. So I mean, I do hope in the very near future we'll get back to our usual 3-day a week, but maybe not quite in that mold. I hope we see a little bit more syllables in that song going. So yeah.
What about you, Souls? Are you kind of missing midweek Arsenal?
I'm not gonna lie. It makes the week drag so much. Like, oh my god, when's Arsenal back on? I really liked when we played. Was it like Friday and then we played Monday, on a Monday and then we played Friday? I actually liked that. I was like, oh, thank God I get to watch Arsenal again. I know it sounds weird, but like, I actually do. Even though we perform shit sometimes, even that like 3 games where we lost, I was like, I still kind of just want to watch them. Like, I can't wait. So yeah, I do kind of miss it, but I want it to be on a Tuesday, Wednesday, not the Thursday. We're not Spurs.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those where it's like, yeah, I want it back, but I would like to be on Tuesdays. That'd be great. But we'll see at the end of the season where we end up. But everybody who's in the chat, let us know where you're watching in from. Let us know what games you've been watching. How are you feeling without Arsenal midweek? All of those great and wonderful things. And make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. We're going to go ahead and get started with the topics of today. So early on today, Ramsdale has been, nominated for Player of the Month for the Premier League. I do have to say I'm a little bit disappointed that Arteta was not nominated for Manager of the Month. I thought that was strange. I thought he would be automatically nominated for that because we were good this month as well. Maybe it was some of the draws in there, but nevertheless, Jonas Idewal, the women's coach, was voted Manager of the Month 2 times in a row. So there's an Arsenal manager in there. But in terms of Player of the Month, Ramsdale's in there. He's in there with Mo Salah, Foden, who's been in incredible form for Man City, Tielemans, who's been good for Leicester, Livramento, that's at Southampton, Cornet, that's at Burnley now, Chilwell, and then Declan Rice. So that's good company. That's really good company. I mean, you can't really look at any of those players. Maybe Chilwell. I know he's been doing okay, but I mean, like, let's be real, but good company. Does it kind of show how good Ramsdale has been for us being in good company like that with players that are playing at the peak of their powers in the Premier League, George?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, look, whenever you say that your goalkeeper should deserve Player of the Month, people immediately go towards this really stupid mindset about defensive ability and how great the defense has been. And maybe that says that your team is crap and that you're not performing well. But, we as fans need to start realizing that the goalkeepers are a major portion of your attacking setup, your build-up, and it isn't an indication of one phase of play. And I think we tend to do this, right? Like whenever you group in a defender, it's typically because, they've done really, really well and they've added some attacking value. And that's why you see them crop up in those players of the month, etc. I just think in terms of Ramsdale, he's been a revolution in terms of what we've been able to do and what you see him and his quality too. Like, I mean, look, I was a huge defendant, kind of lone survivor on Twitter about Aaron Ramsdale, and after scouting him, it was very, very evident why we wanted him. And I just don't feel he gets the plaudits that he deserves. Everyone says that, Ederson has an amazing passing range and, Ramsdale isn't spoken about in the same breath. Why? Because he's English. He's white. Yeah, I don't get the reason. Like, should he be Ramsdale-inho? Like, maybe then you'll give him his credit because on absolute objective measures, he's up there. And, I think there were some crazy things every time that Arsenal fans suggest that their players have been doing well. It's met with this kind of scoffing, this ridiculous notion that you're delusional. And I don't get it because it's gotten to the point where it's just bias at this point. It's dead banter. It's not even banter because you guys believe it. Like, people hide behind that thing where they're saying that, oh, it's banter. I'm like, no, but the problem is you believe it. And you don't carry the same standards that you do with other people. And look, that's not to say that the people mentioned haven't had a great season. When we talk about Player of the Month, these are all exceptional players in great form. Form is not enough. For me, when I distinguish between the two, it's really I look at the form of the team and how much that player has contributed to it, because they've all individually are in excellent form, no matter what metric you're going to use, from goalkeeping saves to, Phil Foden and his output, as well as to his effect on general play. So when you start to have these debates, for me, it really, the separator becomes how important is that specific player, despite individually brilliant for everybody else, been to their team's form, and how consistent has that been in multiple games. And you know what? I feel we get to this point where even despite draws, Ramsdale was a shining light. Like, it wasn't as though he was the reason that those draws occurred. That was more structure issue. He was actually a big part why we stayed competitive in a lot of those games. And so for me, it's just, I feel that we use recency bias on output to really kind of dictate our results about where we swim and where we lean towards this. So look, I'm just happy that we've got somebody nominated. I'm happy that he's slowly getting his plaudits. I don't think it's quick enough. I think this guy,
it's happening so slow, isn't it?
It's ridiculous to me. Like, I don't understand it. Like, when you start to say in the same breath that he's performed in the same form as Edouard Mendy, then that is fine to say. These are both excellent keepers that at their pomp right now are probably the best goalkeepers in the league on form. And, you don't have to hold back by saying that because you're evaluating form. You're not evaluating the long-term potential and ceiling of a player. You're looking at form. And over the last month, there really hasn't been, bar Edouard Mendy, a contender for best goalkeeper in form. He's just been absolutely immense. And so I just feel that we need to give him the plaudits. I mean, there really isn't much Ramsdale hasn't done. If you look through distribution, claiming crosses, his organization of the team, even in terms of his free kick, he's had an excellent save. He's had an individual feat that, no goalkeeper has come close to in the last month. So I think when you talk about X player, X manager of the month, it's very short term, it's very 6 week based. And based on that evidence, it's very clear that he's up there. And you know what? Extend it to the beginning of the season, and you become even more surprised why people are continuously not giving him the credit he deserves. Like at this point, I basically ask, do you watch him? Because if you do, it becomes very clear. It's not even bias based. He just is that good.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of mental gymnastics people go through when it comes to wanting the best possible goalkeeper for their national team as well. You know, do you really want Pickford in there where you could potentially have Ramsdale in there instead? Well, then an Arsenal player is playing ahead of Jordan Pickford, so it'll be interesting to see how the narrative change and the mental gymnastics that people go through to try to figure out how they can separate Ramsdale from Arsenal when he's at some point going to end up being the number one goalkeeper for England, I think. But Souls, for you, I think for me, when I'm looking at the list of the players that are in for Player of the Month, your Declan Rice, your Foden, your Livramento. I think what really separates some of these players is had they not been in the team, what would the results have been for those teams? Does that make sense? So if you look at somebody like Chilwell, if he was not there, do you think they'd get some of the same results? Probably. Foden, probably. Now, when you look at Salah and what he's doing for Liverpool and the fact that they're bleeding goals and maybe some of their other offensive players are not holding their weight, like Mane is going through a weird period as well. Ramsdale's quite similar to that, where if you took him out of the team and you had Leno there, what would the difference be? Do you think that that's the difference between maybe Ramsdale being considered the actual player of the month and voting for him and maybe voting for somebody else? Maybe should people look at what these teams would be like without the player when they make their decision to vote?
No, I think that is a consideration that people need to be having, especially when you're considering a large proportion of these votes are done by journalists, and I think it's like ex-footballers or something like that. And I think it's unfair to say because goalkeepers and defenders are notoriously very underrated in football because they're not the ones scoring the goals. They're not the ones, getting all the plaudits of 90-minute goals and to save their team. But they're doing the dogged work. Goalkeepers go so under the radar in terms of how important they are to the team's mental state. We've seen it with Leno, for example, in the Europa League run where Gabriel didn't pass it to him and we got knocked out by Olympiacos. Now we've got Ramsdale, who everyone trusts, that whole backline trusts, and they can pass it back to him. And don't forget, his distribution has been impeccable in getting us goals. We were one of the lowest scoring teams in the Premier League. We were one of the worst defensive teams starting in the Premier League, conceding nearly, what was it now, 5 against City, 2 against Brentford, 2 against, so that's 9 goals in 3 games. To turn that around to have one of the best defensive records, it speaks volumes. I know Gabriel joined that defense as well. Tomiyasu came in as well, but Ramsdale was a huge part in stabilizing that, being a commanding voice in the back line. Of course, Salah deserves his praises. Foden deserves their praises, but they're always going to get praises because they are output machines. Even Tielemans, that's what outfield players do. As soon as they start scoring goals, it's like they're the best players in the league. Whereas with goalkeepers, no matter what they do, they can be pulling off save after save after save, but they will never get the plaudits like a Salah would. They wouldn't be contenders for the Ballon d'Or. Even like Neuer, when he had his impeccable season for Bayern Munich, wasn't really considered. People like, oh no, but this player, because he was scoring more goals, he scored X, Y, and Z amount of goals. If they're not scoring goals, they're never really going to be in the conversation or in the shout for player of the season or player of the month. And I find that very, very disrespectful. And you do have to consider how important they've been as an individual to the team they're performing for. Take Ramsdale out, and guess what? We'd crumble against Brighton, would crumble against Crystal Palace. It's his saves that kept us in the game. So I do think you need to look at the importance of the player as much as what they've done for the team and what their output has been.
Yeah, I'm just going to say it right now that I think he's, out of all of Arteta's signings, and this is even going back to last season with Thomas Partey and Gabriel, I don't think we really need to mention Willie and Dewey, but out of all of Arteta's signings, really, even some of the players that he's given new contracts to, I have to be honest, I think Ramsdale has had the biggest effect quickest. And I didn't know how how different it would feel having a different goalkeeper. And I guess you probably could have felt that with Emmy a little bit, and then going back to Leno, it was kind of like, but it still wasn't to this extent. Like, it just wasn't. And it's just interesting to see like the difference in the fan base. I feel like it's not just what he's doing on the pitch, because it's like he's drawing everybody in, and even Leno, he's one of those that always seemed like he was kind of on an island. He was an Arsenal player, but he wasn't really a family member in that way. He just kind of came and did his job and left. And Ramsdale's the guy that stays late, and cleans up the kitchen with you. Like, that's kind of how I think of him. And it's just a different feeling. Like, those are soft factors. And if he has a bad game, you're not really going to be thinking about his connection to the fan base and all of that. But it does kind of make a difference. So, George, for you, is Ramsdale the most transformative signing that Arteta has made so far? Or do you think there's somebody else in there that has done something similar? I mean, you could say Emile Smith-Rowe, and we'll get on to him in a little bit, because I consider players that he gave new contracts also somewhat of signings. But Ramsdale, for me, has been the most transformative. What do you think?
I mean, if you're going to rope in Emile, it has to be him, in my opinion. Like, in terms of, if you look at Emile out of the squad, and I think that's maybe unfair on Ramsdale because he just doesn't have the sample, period. I mean, they both started quick outside of the books, but just factually, when we don't have Emile Smith-Rowe in the team, we almost have like 2 points on average less as a team, which is crazy. Like, when you draw that out statistically, that is just absolutely immense. And so for me, probably longevity of sample, ESR, because I don't think Gabriel has been as good as he's been in recent weeks for the entirety of his tenure. And then I don't think that Thomas Partey has been consistent without injuries enough for the longevity of his tenure. Like, again, Emile's just been brilliant, and he's taken his game to a next level this season, but he's always been brilliant since basically Boxing Day. And so that's probably, if we're going to include contract extensions, probably Emile. But if you're telling me like who had the quickest impact, it has to be Ramsdale for me. Like, I think Tommy Asu deserves a shout in terms of if we're comparing the quickest starts, but I think Ramsdale's just been better, and he hasn't really had a poor-ish couple minutes or even performance. Like, I think Tommy Asu struggled in a couple halves. Technically, like, there's been things to improve on, but Ramsdale's just been good. 8 out of 10 constantly. Like, I don't think there's been any glaring errors. I mean, you want to argue the Højbjerg pass to Saka, maybe, in your nitpicking. Like, that's probably the only piece in 90 minutes that we have of sample that, you're like, ugh, and that's it. I mean, that's phenomenal for a goalkeeper. And it just, I literally don't understand why we're not having him in conversations for top 5 goalkeepers in the league. I don't understand it. Like, for me, what I don't understand is when you look at the save percentage, he's second, by the way, only to Edouard Mendy. When people quote that Tuchel's system doesn't concede, guys, Arteta conceded 4 and he conceded 2 in the Premier League. Are we really saying 2 goals difference, including, by the way, when we had all those spine missing in the first 3 games, is anywhere near comparable about the quality of players and what we have? Like, I just think the context that we're applying here is just absolutely stupidity to me. I'm sorry I'm going this hard, but like, I don't understand how you're going to go and praise Tuchel, which he deserves, by the way. It's an excellent record. But then at the same token, not praise the effect that Ramsdale would have on a team conceding 4 only goals. In, by the way, with the first 3 games, missing their entire back line and a large portion of their spine. It's just, for me, I don't understand this mentality because, what you're starting to do is you start to make narrative and you just let narrative run. And for me, I feel part of our duty as commentators on this sport is to speak honestly when somebody is deserving of praise. And he is. Like, again, I challenge anybody to give me something Ramsdale could work on in these games that he's shown. I really do. I haven't seen a weakness. That's not to say he'll never be weak. That's not to say he's going to have a perfect season. But just factually, the boys deserve the credit. Again, like you said, those soft factors, they count. It's not that they don't count. I feel that sometimes when we talk about mentality, culture, they get swept under the rug until you're good. And it's only then that you start talking about it. And you have to wait till you're good. And I think part of that does play a role, by the way. So Ramsdale will never be seriously considered until Arsenal are 3rd in the table and have been for several months, because the narrative is Arsenal are crap. That's the narrative from pundits to everybody. And it's just crazy to me because I feel as though there was an XG table that was going around kind of on Twitter, and I had a really big problem with it in terms of looking how poor the XG differential, which, by the way, just for those that don't know, is, XG is basically now a pseudo of performance, which is ridiculous. But it's the idea that how many chances you've created are likely to turn into goals. And, the differential of that is just how many times would you likely to concede versus likely to score. And, Arsenal were kind of average of the pack. And everyone was like, oh, see, look, we haven't improved. And then when you start to make the table without the first 3 games, you shoot up next to Liverpool and Man City. And of course, look, what you don't want to do is remove sample. But at the end of the day, removing those first 3 games is just accurate because we didn't have more than 3 players in their spine. It's not you choosing data points. It's not you choosing something to suit your argument. We just factually aren't employing Mari, etc., for the entirety of this game. So it's stupid. Why would you do that? So yeah, I have a big problem, I think, with some of this analysis. A lot of it's recency bias, and I just don't think Arsenal will get the respect both in stature but also their players until they're back in the Champions League. And then people are going to be like, oh, how did they get so good? And I'm like, you know what? You're being an idiot. I'm sorry. Like, you have to sit there and critique honestly and be honest with yourselves, because, I'm seeing a lot of content creators say, why are Manchester United so bad? No one predicted this. No, there was a couple people that saw this. In fact, I did it before the preseason, and there's video evidence to show why that they weren't that good. And, I did that on purpose because I knew people would say, well, you never knew they would get that bad. I'm like, we did. And I always knew that we would be very, very good in terms of our performances, our consistency, once our spine was back. I knew this would happen. And, I think people are just maybe slowly starting to understand the importance. When we start to say spine, when we start to say technical security in the back line, they're not buzzwords. These things matter in terms of performance. And you don't get consistency without those cogs and pillars in place. And Ramsdale is probably the biggest pillar that we have right now in that back line. That's probably the point. And I'm with Souls on it. You look at the team's form and you take him out of the team, like you've said as well, Jess. And would those teams and him individually have the same impact on the team? I don't know. Maybe Salah is the only one because Liverpool have struggled for quite a while. But other than that, I think a lot of the players that you've mentioned, Jess, like you said, those teams would continue the results. Those teams would probably impact to a degree because they've been great. They've been in great form. But those teams' results would probably be very similar if you were to simulate kind of like on FIFA those results. I don't know if Arsenal's would with Leno.
No,
like you put Leno in there. I don't think that we sim to the degree that we've done here.
No, and that's no shade to Leno. I just feel like some of the things that Ramsdale's been doing are just not. I mean, does he pass the ball to Xhaka under pressure?
Yeah.
In the Spurs match, I don't know. I think he kicks it long or whatever. It just, we know that he's made a huge difference. But let's pivot a little bit and talk about Emile Smith-Rowe. I think we knew that Ramsdale would get the call up, and I think we knew Bukayo would get the call up. But I think out of the other 2 players that we figured might have a chance, Emile was the one that we were like, okay, this is his chance. He's going to get his call up. Now, for me, it's not a huge deal if he does or he doesn't, because I know he's really young. I know that the England setup is cognizant of weakening their under 21s, because they have games and stuff like that. But then I also am like, does Southgate have the balls to drop certain players or, whatever? I think a big reason why Emile may not have gotten the call up is because Rashford came in and scored 3 goals on the bounce. If he was still injured and Sancho was still on the bench, I don't think you can look past Emile to take over one of those forward spots. Like, I just don't. But if you go through form, which is something that Southgate has talked about, that's how he chooses his team, is from form. Emile has better form than pretty much everybody that plays in his position, not including like Harry Kane and stuff, because he's a center forward. But we're talking Sterling, we're talking
better
Grealish.
Form than Harry Kane, by the way. Factually.
He does. I didn't count him because he's a center forward and stuff. But I was just like the wide men. He has better form than Rashford, better form than Sterling, better
Foden,
form
Grealish,
than Jack Grealish.
Ward-Prowse. The list goes on.
So we're not really looking at form here. I know he's young. But you guys are playing like Andorra and like some other team that's like
San Marino.
like could you have not have brought him in? I mean, his form has been scintillating. The guy has been absolutely game changing. And when I was on the football tears earlier, they were like, well, it's just been a couple of games. It hasn't. It's been since December. It hasn't.
People
Like
don't watch Arsenal.
We've been telling you, like, I know that Southgate likes Emil, but I do think that there's scope for Arsenal fans to feel like a little bit pissed off that Emil didn't get a call up when some of the players that have been called in are in really bad form and haven't done shit at all this season. So, and I think what irritates me the most is the outrage at Arsenal fans feeling some type of way. I do think that something that we've spoke about over the last couple of weeks in some of our chats or whatever is about how vocal Arsenal fans need to be now, about our players and not feel like we need to hide and stuff like that because we're not in top 4. We should just wait. And I kind of do feel like we're not going to get any respect until we are. But at the same time, like, Emil Smith-Rowe is one of the best creative, like, attacking midfielders in the league right now, on form and has been since December. He should get called up, and it's okay to say that. You know what I mean? But Souls, what do you think about Emil Smith-Rowe and him not getting that call up? I mean, he has to be a little bit disappointed. Like, and that's what's most important to me is what would he want if he would want to get called up, which I'm sure he does, then that's what I'd want. Selfishly, I want him sitting at home with his feet up. But he's going to go to the under-21s anyway. So what do you think about it?
I do think it's a bit disgraceful because obviously when you look at form, which is what he should be on, it should be on merit on form, not. But the thing is, though, I'm not surprised at all.
What is it? Sorry, I'm going to let you go ahead. But what is it based on if it's not form for a qualifier?
No. But this is what I'm going to get onto. But the reality is, if you look at any Southgate squad, it's never been on that. It's been on form on how they've done for the country, not on how they've done for the club. Southgate, in my opinion, runs England like a club, and I've said this for a very long time, is if you perform for him, he will pick you. Sterling has no redeeming qualities to why he should be selected in his current standings. He's not even in favour for Man City's starting 11, but yet he'll be called up. Harry Kane will be called up, regardless of how many stinkers he's been dropping and down-tooling for Spurs. Now, I know people are going to sit there and go, yeah, but he didn't want to play for the manager. That's not an excuse. You still were out of form. You still haven't done anything. You've been missing for, 8 games where you haven't scored, but yet you're in the England squad. And I think Southgate, and I've always known this, is Southgate picks teams depending on how they've done for him, not necessarily how, because Jordan Pickford should never have been in the Euro squad. Let's be real. Like, he should not be starting over the likes of Dean Henderson or even giving it to just Sam Johnston, for example. That should never have happened because Jordan Pickford for Everton was absolutely trash. Maguire, okay, fair enough. I can understand why he played. I can understand why John Stones played. But then Kyle Walker, for example, Trent not being called up, Wan-Bissaka not being called up. This is the issue. And I think that is, for me, the biggest indicator why I'm not shocked, why I'm not surprised. I would love it for Emil Smith-Rowe to be called up, especially for friendlies. This is not the World Cup where you need to be really serious. I feel disappointed because this is the time where, and Trippier got banned for 10 games and was immediately called up, and he didn't even play after the 10-game ban, and he was already in the squad. And I think this is why I don't think we can win anything, because there's so many players who deserve it, especially in clutch moments, that can come through for England. They could have come through that Italy game if we had the likes of, let's say, Tomori there, if we had the likes of, Saka maybe like playing more of the games rather than coming in halfway through the tournament. Then he does the stupidness with Sancho and Rashford coming on midway in the games. And for me, he needs to stop running it like a club and giving players their chances on merit, because it is demoralising for a player who's played so hard, who's not only just for Arsenal, but for England's under-21. He scored in both the games that they played on the under-21s in the, I can't even remember what the competition was, but he scored in both of them.
Qualifiers,
for the qualifiers, and he's been amazing for them. So why not get the call up? And I just think
when
it is
are
a
you
little
going to
bit
get the chance? That's
exactly
what I don't understand. When will you actually get a chance?
Because this is the last qualifiers before the World Cup.
And when are you, like, my whole thing is, if there's no way you get into the team, even when players are out of form, then when do you get a chance? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that is the time where you drop people is when they're out of form and they're not playing well. And there's so many players in that team. And maybe they're saying it's because they played in the Euros. And I have to be honest, I feel like most of the English players that played in the Euros have not started off well. But still, like, if there's no chance for you to even get in when players are out of form, then when are you meant to get a chance? I don't get it. And it may seem like, oh, get over it, Emil Smith-Rowe will get a chance. But if we don't start bitching now, who knows? Like, he should be in that squad at some point, and like he deserved a call up, period. Like, to me, I just think he just deserved it.
I have some big issues here, and I'm going to lay it out. I'm going to preface it with this. For Arsenal, this is unbelievable. For Arsenal, selfishly, this is great because you basically allow people to bubble at their own rate. You don't get to risk for injuries. Very selfishly, in the short term, it's probably great for top four. I'm going to do all that preface stuff because the entirety of this squad picking is crap. And I'm going to repeat, it's utter BS. From whatever side that you look at it, it's hypocrisy to the nth degree. Emil Smith-Rowe, let's go through it factually, by the way, since the last international break, has had 5 EPL contributions, and the only one to match him was Mason Mount, who, by the way, got 3 of his 5 in one game against Norwich. Okay, now the people that he's beaten is Phil Foden with 4, Grealish with 3, Lingard 2, Sterling 1, Sancho has none, and he's been dropped. So thank God, at least you were consistent in one aspect. But then you listen to Gareth Southgate's answer as to why he wasn't picked, and it was because of depth. It was because of depth-wise, the squad has a lot of depth. Well, mate, sorry, but if he's got more goal and assist contributions than your depth, should he not be brought in as depth? Why is James Ward-Prowse there? Okay, look, I can understand that, they don't want the nation expectations, but, when you're getting to the point of what Sol said about it being a club decision or not, he's killed it for the England U21, so that excuse doesn't buy it for me. In the England setup, he's been immense. And whether or not it's politics or not, the biggest robbery is Ben White. And this, for me, just shows that there's a clear bias, there's a clear delineation, because how is Connor Cody, Tyrone Mings getting in ahead of Tomori, getting in ahead of Ben White? Like, explain to me the law.
Chalobah? I think there's a shout for Chalobah as well.
He's really
good as well. Yeah.
There is a shout, but I don't understand it. So your hypocrisy doesn't make sense. If you didn't want to give it to Emil Smith-Rowe because he's not ready, which, by the way, is horseshit. He's outscored every single one of your shouts right now. So don't give me that. And by the way, he did it in England and in the Premier League. Mm-hmm. So don't give me that. But if you want to, cool. Why in the world is Ben White and Tomori, what do they have to do? Let's go to Tomori, because every time you mention Arsenal, we're biased and we're deluded. Let's mention Tomori. What does that boy have to do in order to get a call-up? He's been immense for AC Milan for time. He's got no errors leading to goals since last January. Explain to me how that makes sense over Tyrone Mings, who, by the way, got dropped for relegation threat in Villa recently. How is it based on merit? It isn't. It's based on politics about who your agents are, and that is the extent of it. So when people start to say that they're going to recognize their own prospects for international gain, recognize this as a popularity contest, because I'm not here looking at results and performance and saying it's based on merit. It just factually is not. And, when you look at Ben White, he's had one bad game with Brentford, which, by the way, doesn't turn out to be so bad. If you really start to dig into that result, how has Ivan Toney performed against everybody? Everyone was hammering him for his aerial ability. Like, I just don't understand it. Even Maguire, you want to go down that list? Let's go down that route. In what way is Harry Maguire, based off just pure injury? Let's forget the performances, which he's been poor, by the way. But let's just go based on his recent injury. How in the blue hell is he getting in ahead of Ben White? Especially right now, it's poor from him. He's just came back from injury. How can you tell me that's the truth? And then look, another one.
John Stones has only played like 2 matches this season.
Yes. Yes.
Saying.
No, I know. And then Conor Gallagher should have absolutely got a spot. He's similarly got goal and assist contributions for England. But by the way, in terms of, just Premier League, he's been absolutely immense in general play, goal and assist contributions. He doesn't have the same as Emil, but he should have gone as well. So for me, look, what I don't understand at this point is I just want an explanation, because for Arsenal, I'm happy. I wanted to preface that because I went on a little bit of a rant, because it's more of a rant on politics. It's a rant on rival fans and people not giving Arsenal players the credit they deserve. Because factually, we didn't just freaking pop up 5th guys or 6th just by luck. You can't be shit and have really horrible players, horrible structure, and play with the form we're playing in. Wolves are the only team in the Premier League with a better form table, by the way, than us. So is that not down to Emile Smith-Rowe, our leader in the final third? Is that not down to our leader in defense, Ramsdale, Ben White? I'm just sick and tired of us having to caveat things because it doesn't fit your narrative subjective, because it's not even true anymore. Arsenal aren't average. We have played well.
Yeah.
We deserve it. We're not saying that we're the best team in the world. We're not saying now that the job is done. But factually, if you're looking at form, which is what the argument is for these internationals, we've had players that are among the best in the league. He deserves it. And purely, I'm just gutted for him because personally, the boost that would have given him would have been immense. I don't think he'll take it bad. I don't think any of that, but just the credit it gives him, it will inflate the balloon that is rising of Emile Smith-Rowe. So yeah, again, I'm happy because selfishly Arsenal prevail with this, but I'm livid with fans, pundits, and just content creators alike just not speaking honestly about the situation. Because we give credit to all their youngsters. We do. We speak objectively about it.
I feel like that's the thing too. It's like I'm not biased. Like I am slightly biased towards
Everyone
Arsenal, of course, but at the same time, like I'm quick to say I think Trevor Chalobah deserves a shout. I've been saying Tomori since last season. I do think that there's some players that have been like overlooked, and then there's some really, really average guys in these teams that don't in this team that doesn't make sense. So in the grand scheme of things, I think from an Arsenal perspective, I think it's important that we feel comfortable and confident giving our players flowers when they deserve it and not feel like we need to be silenced because we're Arsenal. And I'm going to say this with chest. Emile Smith-Rowe should have been called up. Ben White should have been called up. Ben White is better than probably 3 or 4 of the guys that they called up. Like he has been in form, and I know for a fact he's better than Connor Cody and he's better than Mings. And if I ask most even rival fans, who would you rather have, Ben White or Mings? You bite my hand off for Ben White. I know you would, so don't lie. So it's just one of those things where it's like I can put it behind, like I'll put it behind me and move on and it's fine. But like it's still going to be there like the next time. I want to see more of our players in there if this form continues, because this is BS, But let's talk about Saka though. Like he's in there. I expect him to go to the World Cup. Like he's in there. Like he really is. And I think Southgate really likes him. And I know he's, from an Arsenal perspective, he may not be in top form. But I think for Saka, it's not always about his goals and assists, because we know as Arsenal fans that he's so much more than goals and assists. It's his personality when he plays, his impetus, his get up and go, the way he takes responsibility, the way he drives with the ball. He's responsible with the ball. He makes good decisions. His footballing IQ is perfect. And he really balances out, like when he plays with Jack Grealish or Sterling, he plays well within their team. And so I wasn't shocked to see him there. But how good is it for you to see, like, regardless of his form, whether it's peak or just a little bit dropped, that Saka's still making this team? I mean, Sancho's been dropped, and let's be real, he was getting some pity call-ups. Like, let's be real. Saka's still in there. This is 21 goals, whatever, Jadon Sancho, whatever. Bukayo motherfucking Saka is still in this team. Talk about Starboy.
100%. Now, do you know what it is? It's like Saka doesn't need to be on top form to influence games. He's not been the Saka we know. We all agree with that. Yes, he is a little bit off form, but that's the standards he's set. It's so damn high that even when it drops a little bit, he's still good. And that is his standards, and this is what we've been missing. And I've always said Bukayo Saka is God's gift to Arsenal fans to say, you've been suffering for so long, here's a little token of light for you. And that is Bukayo Saka. That's why I call him Starboy, because he is the shining light that we've needed for such a long time, a player to build around. And Emile Smith-Rowe is the other token, that we've been given by God himself. It's like, here you go. We're building something here. And I've said it again, and I'll say it again. There's something special brewing at Arsenal, and it's going to be an inevitable soon. Emile Smith-Rowe, Ben White, Ramsdale, Saka. Do you know what? England's core is going to be Arsenal players. Get ready for it. because it is coming. And guess what? We've got William Saliba, who's going to be the core of France's build and set up in their defence as well. We are coming for the national teams now. We are no longer that small, timid Arsenal that, no kahunas, like, Troy Deeney used to say, we're not here for the physical battles. Now Bukayo Saka has set the standards for all the Premier League youngsters. He's dropped them all. Foden couldn't play. Sancho couldn't play. They're the star boys, right? Where are they? Not competing with Saka. My man comes into the quarterfinals, takes over from there all the way to the final, whilst your man's are sitting on the bench. Even Rashford, one of the most notorious youngsters, who's 23, couldn't get over him. And that's how good he is. He set the benchmark. He's not messing around. He's focused on his football. And that's the reason why we heap these praises on him. He's not been on form, but he's still one of our best players. That is crazy to say, because if Foden drops in form, you'll see it and you'll be like, all right, he's not influencing games as much. Greenwood, for example, when he drops form, he's no longer scoring, he's no longer influencing games, but Saka's not the same. And that is why I praise this guy and I say to him, his future is a lot brighter than a lot of people's in the Premier League.
Yeah, like, look, we kind of talked about this a little bit. We use it to do the little player debates that we have with that other prime number guy. But the reason that, Bukayo Saka is, so good, even when he's not just informed. And, so you're right. Like, his game isn't about output. In fact, it's one of his weaknesses. And so when he does get it, you're like, well, what can't he do? The thing with, the whole selection kind of bias with it is Bukayo Saka is probably the most intelligent footballer I've seen, bar, like Lionel Messi, really. I haven't seen somebody able to drop into so many different positions, and it's almost like he gets a software update. The man has not played center back. That's the only thing he hasn't played. Right wing back, goal and assist there. Left wing back, left center mid. Number 10, right wing. Like, left back, like, he has a goal and assist contribution, guys, in every single one of their positions. Can you name me another footballer on this earth that has that, by the way? And you can't. And the reason is I just think I love narrative because I love smashing it. I don't think Bukayo Saka gets the intelligence credit and tag that he deserves. Because, yeah, he's great in terms of all of the on-the-ball skills. Yeah, he's great in terms of the dribbling, the close control, some of these half-turn abilities. But this man is so intelligent. That's why he gets trusted. That's why coaches love him, because he recognizes game state and he'll cater to your weaknesses. He won't go and he'll impose himself, don't get me wrong, but he will cater to the team's weaknesses to find a way to make it work. And those players are just absolutely invaluable. And again, look, once he gets output, because that's scary, that's something he's not good at. That's actually a weakness of his. And so when he starts to get that, I worry for people because, this kid is very humble. Another thing is in structure. He'll never let you down in the press. He will work hard. And, that's kind of the reason why you basically pick him. That's why coaches pick him, because he not only makes those around him better if he's having a poor game, but he still will do the hard yards and he still will keep your structure. You're never afraid of him not following instructions. And so even if he's poor, what do all your coaches tell you? Even if you're playing poor, keep it close, keep it two-touch. Don't go and over-elaborate. Just keep your game simple. He does that to the nth degree. Bukayo Saka does the simple things right, and he makes football just look beautiful. And that's basically all you need as a coach and as a player.
And the thing about Saka is that, some people are really worried about his ability to play in different positions. But he's not a utility player. He can play in multiple positions, but at a very, very high level. It's not really like Ainsley Maitland-Niles. It's quite different. He can do them at a high level, and we're just waiting on him to get output. I really think he's going to be like Sterling. I think in a couple of years, you'll see it, and it'll be there. But then also what will be there is the IQ, the burst that you always talk about, George, his ability to just be in the right place at the right time and make the right decisions, plus output, and him being able to do it no matter if he's on the right or the left, deeper, higher, whatever. It's not like being a utility player and being a jack of all trades and a master of none. He's a jack of all trades and a master of everything. That's what he is. He just needs to get the output. That's how I see him. Like,
And his
so
movement,
that's
his
why I'm like,
movement
when people,
means that he will. Like, like when you look at him, it's not like
yeah,
he doesn't get in goal scoring positions. It's just more about patterning that composure. And that's basically it.
100%. Exactly. So I won't sit here and allow people to try to minimize Bakayo into some Swiss Army knife, a rusty Swiss Army knife. He's not
Yeah.
that. He's going to be an elite level player, and you have to give him the time to get that output, and he's going to get it. But at this moment in time, even without tons of goals and assists, he's getting into the England squad ahead of a lot of very talented players, and that's a good sign. Bad sign for us in terms of physical, hopeful. Like at some point I would love for Bukayo to get a rest, but this is probably what he wants. So I'm super, super happy for him. And I'm just hoping that at some point Ben White and ESR get the same opportunity. So there's 125 of you guys watching on all platforms. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. And we're going to do a little bit of Q&A for the next 10, 15 minutes. We have some more time. So go ahead and drop your questions into the chat box. Make sure it's obvious that it's a question. Let's keep it football related. Doesn't necessarily have to be Arsenal related, but we're not getting into our personal lives today, okay? So yeah, let's see what's going on here. Oh man, I saw one that was straight to George. It was something about a war. Oh,
Oh
here
yeah,
it
wasn't
is.
it
Maybe
Mike
why
G?
don't
Yeah.
people like him?
Yeah, Matt
Um,
G, George, you're a big fan of Awar. Why do you think the idea of signing him isn't popular with most fans as someone like Basuma?
I don't know. I think it's because people still don't like Granit Xhaka, and I think they don't realize the impact of having him back, what it does. I think, look, when I look at Awar, look, he's great for all of the technical abilities and the final thirds that we do. But the reason I select somebody like him over Basuma, my biggest argument has been versatility. If we get an injury to Odegaard, we have an option in Awar. If we get an injury to even Emile Smith-Rowe, we have an option in Awar. If we get an injury even to Granit Xhaka, we have an option in Awar. He's played in a double pivot against the Centurions with Ndombele and shown he can. Like, for me, if you were to buy Basuma, who would be excellent and an upgrade at one position, you don't fix depth higher up the pitch. And for the same price, let's argue, for argument's sakes, for 30 million pounds, they're both transformative signings in their own right, but Awar solves many more holes. And so for me, that's been my argument towards it. It's not that Basuma wouldn't fix a hole. It's not that he wouldn't transform this team. He would, but he transforms it in one position. And he is versatile as a 6 or an 8, but Awar could fix multiple phases of play, midfield, attack, output. Like that is the crux of it. He solves 2 holes excellently. And he's coming into form. Like, this is his highest goal scoring season to date. So on track. It's not technically an output, but
Well,
he's
when
on
he fell off last season,
track.
he had more goals than he did the season prior when we were
Yeah.
actually really in for him.
Well,
So,
well,
I mean,
that's
if we're talking
narrative.
about somebody who's out of form and still getting output,
Yeah.
there you go.
Well, yeah,
But
that's narrative. But that's the reason, that I
yeah,
place him higher, at least.
I went back and watched a game that they played in the Europa League not too long ago against Slavia Praha, I think, and he was the captain. I actually watched it this
Yeah.
morning, and I just thought, getting the captain's armband, I think, was a smart move by whoever made that decision. I think it's Peter Bosch is now their manager now, to give him the responsibility and grow up a little bit. He probably just needed that little bit of a push, to kind of take over. And I did see a little bit more of that impetus because they did go down 2-0 and came back and won the game 3-2 or 4-2 or something like that. And he was really, really good. And it wasn't a game where it was a pretty easy, nice, how the games can be against the teams like Slavia Praha. They're quite physical. And he was in there. He's definitely in there. And he has grown as a player, coming of age, 24 years old now, about ish, so he's somebody for me that I feel like, even Guendouzi, I feel like he might be this way. We don't know. Sometimes people just need to grow up, and I think Awar's doing that in front of our eyes. And I think people have a weird skewed vision of him based on a couple of little reports that we don't really know much about. But Don One has a question asking about football and the mentality of football players. So football is 50% mentality and 50% football. thoughts on the psychology of players that we have signed. Souls, you've talked about this a lot, about the difference between these players mentally than players that we've gotten in the past. You want to take a
Yeah, I've always used
stab
like
at this?
modern day football is the same as boxing, and boxing is very 70. I think it's 70 to 80% mental, and it's 20 to 30% actual in event
Technique, yeah.
performances, and that's what I've put into football, especially with crowd, social media, and how much more of a I guess a role model you have to be. So it is a bit of a psychology thing, and especially when fans can turn on you, it can get very toxic very quickly, and it is how you're going to handle those situations. Like for example, the when we went down to West Ham 3-0, that was a big turnaround, for Arteta to really get into them, or whoever it may have been, whether it was Arteta or whether it was like Granit Xhaka or whether it was someone else in the dressing room who really took that role to like motivate these guys and go, come on lads, we've got this, and to go back out and win 3-3. And then when you're looking at this season in particular, for example, with the likes of Tomiyasu, Ben White, Ramsdale being added in, and just looking at their interviews and how they perceive Arsenal, there's like a dream move for them. We really want to come in and we want to, improve Arsenal. Ramsdale coming in into his signing like video where we did the whole where he talked about obviously dedicating it to his granddad, blah blah blah, and then he went on to saying that I'm gonna rip that shirt off Leno's back, and I was like, fucking hell, bro, like that is, and we've not had that, and this is the thing is it's competitive, but everyone's happy. And it's like one of those places where even though you're all competitive in a workplace, it's still a good vibe. And that's what we're getting at Arsenal. And I've said it for a very long time, for 17 odd years, Arsenal has been a very comfortable place to go. People come to retire there. And that's the notion we have. We're a retirement home. We're a sentimental football club. Players are getting injured and we're continuing their contracts for 2 to 3 seasons, hoping they get better. And look, I'm not disrespecting Santi Cazorla or Jack Wilshere, but we did keep them on the wage books for far longer than probably we should have been. And I know people are going to be, but that's the classy side of Arsenal. That's what we love about Arsenal. And that's fair enough. Like, and I'm not saying, but there is a ruthless element to Arsenal. Like, you need to be on board mentally. And hence why Guendouzi, for example, why Kolasinac is going to be going, Ozil when, Mustafi when, it's because if you're not on board mentally about, look, we're here for each other. We're not going to just constantly blame each other. Let's do our bit and, we'll win together. We'd collapse against Crystal Palace. We would have collapsed against Brighton because these are traditionally the games we would have lost if it hadn't been for the mentality change that, look, it could be Arteta or it could be someone else. I'm not going to sit there and go, it's all Arteta. Until we don't see the documentary. In the documentary, we'll know our answers for sure, who actually is the guy influencing the back room. And I do, obviously it is Arteta. I'm just saying it because people go, no, Arteta doesn't do anything. So just for you guys, it could be someone else. So yeah, don't get on me. I'm just a messenger.
The one thing I will say is that the players so far have shown a resiliency that I haven't seen in the past from some of our players. In adversity, they've done things that I haven't seen in a long time. They've showed their faces. They've come up in the next game and had different types of performances, like Sambi. Like, he had some really poor performances and made it his business to turn that around quickly. Ben White, mentality change from, like, he was kind of shaky and then he got out of it quickly. Gabriel taking the leadership role in the back, Ramsdale being a leader in the back. Like, there has been a mentality shift, and I think that has to do with the recruitment. I think there was a strong idea about bringing in players that not only had the actual technical thing that we need and also having the mental side of it. But what I really want to see is how we perform in these next 2 matches. I think that will give me a really good indication of where we are mentally. We're in a very good position to be very, very close to that top 4. And in the past, we've crumbled when the pressure has been on. And quite frankly, I don't think the pressure has ever been on us this early on. We're usually either chasing it at the back end of the season or at this point, we've already kind of dropped off and it just doesn't really make any sense. And we'll be playing Watford, a team that we should at home stomp. We're coming off of some good form. We should go into the Watford game and have very similar performances, perform well, put the game away. Then we come back from international break and play one of the best teams in the country away from home. What I really want to see is what our mentality is from one game to the other. We gave them a huge pass in terms of the Man City game because it wasn't them. It wasn't the team that we're talking about now. This team, I would expect them to put in the same performance level, not results, performance level from the Watford game to the Liverpool game. I want to see if we lose the match. I want to feel decent. We all kind of know like Liverpool is that team where it's kind of like we figure we're going to lose. But George, for you, don't you want to see a performance that matches what we've been doing over the last 9 games? Wouldn't it be a little bit disappointing if we kind of went back into our shell and did what we did against Man City early on in the season, or even what we did against Liverpool last season, where we just got played off of the park?
So for me, I don't place as much performance value added in this one. I'll be honest, because I just want a structure. I don't want, I don't even go about performance and consistency, because for me, this team's performance and consistency hasn't been good. And that's because of the midfield. I've been very clear. I don't think that we can sustain games until 70 minutes until we really address that midfield. And so for me, I'm not going to demand something that I don't really expect. I do want to press. I want to go. I want to have a go at them. And I just want a structure that's bid the same. I don't want him to galaxy brain. I don't want him to switch it up. I want him to maintain his values. And whatever happens, happens for me, because I don't think that Liverpool is the metric for top 4. I think beating your Watfords, beating your Crystal Palaces, and our form preceding that is what gets you top 4. It's not even the top 6 away about traditionally. And while it's never nice, I'm not saying I'm expecting to lose or whatnot. I'm just realistic about this team's path. And I just think without Granit Xhaka, expecting a performance even is going to be tough for a team that are young and mentally will have ups and downs. There's going to be a game. And if we do really, really poorly, I'm not going to then slam them and say, see, this was the trough I was waiting for to really hammer the players. Because, look, it's going to happen.
Do you feel like that's what's going to happen within the fan base, that there will be a little bit of – because Watford is really like, if we beat Watford and we lose to Liverpool,
then,
that's
right?
not really a – it's not really – for me, I'm just looking for a performance. Like, and I know what I'm looking for, and maybe performance is not the right word for it, but there's a big difference between when Arsenal are performing and when they're not, and we all know what it looks like.
No, 100%. You know no, 100%. Like, I think, look, we can be mature about what level, and like, I think you just don't want to see a capitulation. I think those are very different things.
Yeah,
right. Like,
exactly.
I think with Man City there was clearly a plan, but there was a clear capitulation. What I don't mind is a 3-1 where it's not close, but we don't capitulate. We have people fighting for balls. The structure is maintained. I felt with City and those big ones, like the issue that I've always had with them is the plan was never maintained. Like, there was a point where we did well.
It's like a ditch.
And then we did.
Do you know, it was that performance against Liverpool. Remember when it was like 1-1 and then they scored 2, and then we had, like I said, had like 2-3 opportunities when he came off the bench.
And
then we lost.
At the beginning of last season.
That I don't mind, because that for me was, we were in it till the 90 minutes, but then it just happened that when we started to really we didn't take our chance, that they came back and won 3-1. That for me is what I want to see, because that's not a capitulation. That's just an unfortunate result where both teams have gone for it. Very high level of performance. It wasn't like we sat in our shell and we tried to defend this lead or anything like that. And that's kind of what I want to see. But hopefully this time we go there and we just spank them one.
I just have a real annoyance, those souls, that why isn't the effort being placed on Watford? Like, look, guys, if you're – look, I know people don't believe my belief that we're going to get top 4. I get that. But in terms of a measuring and a yardstick for every fan in this fan base, is it not top 6 and top 4? Like, for me, it isn't Anfield away. Like, even at our very best, we've struggled at Anfield, like, historically. So and I'm not saying you, Jess, but I'm saying the fan base is using Liverpool as a yardstick, and I don't get why. I really don't. Like, for me, it has to be Watford. It has to be consistency outside the top 6. In fact, Arteta's improved our top 6 record. Period. Home and away. Like we've already seen that yardstick. But the yardstick that we haven't seen is consistency outside the top 6. That's why we failed. That's why we've dropped to 8. It's not been the top 6 record. It just hasn't. In fact, our top 6 record is very, very good. So, yeah, if you get the odd loss here or there and a poor performance, it can happen on the day. I just don't understand hammering a team that isn't complete for
you guys know I don't care about Like in the grand scheme, I don't sit around and go, how are we going to beat Man City and Liverpool? I'm thinking we need to beat up Watford and all of these guys, like, you know, Brighton and Fulham and them Manda. Those are the people that we need to be beating up on. Like,
And
I just think from a mental standpoint, it's what I want to see. I just want to, for me to see a real mental turnaround. If we go 1-0 down against Liverpool, I don't want a complete capitulation. If that doesn't happen and we still, let's say, lose that game, and let's say we try to fight it, we stuck to our plans, no stupid red cards, none of that happens, then I'll be like, okay, you know what, mentally we've turned this around. We know the objective was try and get top 4, top 6, depending on what metrics you want to use or what objective you've got for the team. I think beating Liverpool and Man City is if you want to go and win the title, which we're not quite there yet anyway. So, but I do want to see us try and stick in the game and do what Brighton did, for example, where they were 2-0 down, but they were like, we're going to stick to our game plan and hope it pays off.
I think that's the issue, though, is that the performance or the results that Brighton and Brentford got against Liverpool are giving people an unrealistic expectation of the Liverpool that we're going to be facing. We're going to be facing Liverpool with Fabinho and Thiago, and it's going to be quite different. Liverpool were kind of weirdly thin in midfield, and I just feel like we need to focus on us. Like,
they were.
So like for me, it's just more about the performance from game to game, kind of being us at least playing out of our skin, at the very least. Like, that's just it, going into tackles, being a part of the physical battle, whatever. We're going to get outplayed by Liverpool 9 times out of 10, but it is what it is. But Souls Hakeem asked, Granit Xhaka or Abba as captain if you had to pick one?
I couldn't give a shit between the two. If I was to pick, I'd give it to Aubameyang. Reason being, I don't think the captaincy ever weighed bearing on him, to be honest. I've always said it, and I maintain it, is that he had a lot of personal stuff going on, whether it was illness related, like medical reasons, like malaria or COVID, and whatever else was going on. Obviously, at the beginning of the season, it was due to whatever was happening with his mum. None of us really need to know what's happened. Obviously, it was just family issues that he had going on. That's what's bearing more weight on him than the captaincy, because look at it, he's still the captain. Is it really doing anything for him this season? Not really. He's still the same Aubameyang we love and want to see.
I think he's upped it, Souls. I mean, I would.
No, that's what I mean. Like, it's not made a difference to him. Like, it is what it is, kind of thing.
I think he's taking it in stride. I'm gonna maybe push back, like opposite wise. I think this is the first season I've seen him take the captaincy seriously. Like the way he speaks in the press about things not being good enough after Instagram. He's the first one. It's not a silly caption. It's always focused. His touch, his consistency and technical ability has been increased this season. He's improved it at 32. Do you know how crazy that is to improve your technical level at 32? Then you start to look at the pressure, Souls. When The Athletic released that article, and he's far and away our greatest pressure. It amazed me because, again, Aubameyang never gets the credit for that stuff, but like he does it, and he's been our best presser this season. So it's just, it's kind of crazy. I think he's taken it more than just in stride. He's used it as fuel, which I don't think he, to be fair, has done in the past. I'm not that deluded. I don't think he's done that in the past, but he has this one.
I think I don't really care that much because.
But you have to say as well. You made us say.
Can I change the question slightly? Like, who do you guys think should be captain after Oba? Maybe that's a little bit more.
How long are we talking then? Like what?
A year, like 2023.
Let's
say Oba finishes his
when he leaves. He walks away for free.
Because let's say Saka gets sold. Like, who's our next captain? I got somebody in mind.
I've got mine.
I think I'm gonna go with Gabrielle. I think.
Oh yes, you can't do that. That's my guy. You can't do that.
I think
I love the Gabrielle.
For me, that's who it is. Tierney, I'm not sure he's gonna play enough games. I have this weird feeling that he's gonna split time with Tavares going forward. Maybe he doesn't play enough games. I don't know. I'm not sure. Gabrielle's playing like the captain I've had in my mind my whole life. Like, I'm like, this is it. He does it every time he goes up for a corner. Have you seen him? You just see his big white teeth, and he's just like, no. I don't even know what he's saying, but I'm just like, I'm getting ready for the corner, like standing there, like, okay, all right, like, because he's so it. Is that who you guys are gonna choose or no?
No, but he was my vice captain, and the only reason is it's Aaron Ramsdale for me, and it's because
Okay.
I need somebody that can talk to the refs a little bit more. I just don't think. Look, I'm sure he'll learn some English, in time, and he's an absolute leader in his own right. It's just I feel Ramsdale's gotten the connection with the crowd. He's been able to galvanize the team and how he sets up. He's a leader in his own third as well as Gabriel. But I just feel like when there's issues with the ref, I want somebody to be able to go in there and really properly communicate themselves. And maybe that's a little bit bigoted of me, but I just need somebody there to really communicate with VAR or whatever. And plus, it doesn't help with a little bit of English tax. So like my thinking is, look, you've got a little bit of your England starting number one goalkeeper. Are you really gonna give him the rub of the green potentially? So like I don't know, soft factor wise, I think Ramsdale, but it is close. Like I love Gabriel. Like for me,
And I'd
Yeah.
like it to be somewhere. I'd like it to be somebody in your spine, but preferably
sure,
not a
for sure.
striker.
Yes.
So your central
And someone
midfielder or your
playing
center back, so your
every time.
goalkeeper.
Nah, do you know what it
Yeah.
is for me? The reason why I want to give it to Gabriel, not. I know this is gonna may
'Cause
come
he's
across a bit
scary.
missing to. No, but it's because I don't want a key player or our key players to have the captaincy. So what I mean by, because if Ramsdale, let's say, is putting a clanger in, not only are you disrespecting Ramsdale, but you're disrespecting the captain of the club. And I just feel like there's two things there. Whereas with Gabriel, because he's the centre back, I know it's a key position, but it's just different. And I think once he learns the language, I don't think anyone's messing with him. I've told you, fam, the guy looks like he'd scrap anyone in it. And he's from Brazil, man. Them man want to scrap everyone. So, yeah, I don't. To be fair, even Ramsdale, not really English, is he? He's like a yard man, isn't it? It's like
he is.
curry goat. And like, have you seen? Did you see the way he went up to Johnny Evans? Like Johnny Evans, like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna go back now.
I love them.
I
too.
love
Like,
Ramsdale.
they're both
I wouldn't care on the
giving
two.
stick. Like, he's kind of that guy that I feel like Gabriel does it. He's more physical, but I feel like Ramsdale gets involved with people. He's just kind of like your bastard.
Yeah, but
like,
Gabriel just looks at them and goes, "You want to try it?" They're like, "No, not really."
Hey, did
Let's
you
walk
see
away.
him chanting that same chant at Leicester? I was dying. Like when he's getting
your
involved
shit chant,
with
like your shit.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I love that. I love that. I really
He's such
do.
a shithouse, really.
It could be
Such a
either one
shithouse.
of them. It could be either one of them, to be
Good.
honest.
But don't you think that speaks to the squad that we've recruited that level? Maybe to tie it back to a question earlier in the show, when you're talking about mentality, that we probably could cite 3 or 4 captains right now that we're really confident could show. And you know what? Even Emil, like I'm thinking about, our own Hale End boys, like they have an opportunity to be in the shout. And I think that's amazing that basically in every third, I think me and you and, Souls, all of us could agree there's probably a standout candidate in every third. It's just nice to see. I don't know. Maybe I'm
Smith throw. Then you've got, even in midfield, you've got Hart and
I could see Emil being like a captain during like a cup match or something like that. Like I can totally see that, like him coming out with his little armband.
I just can't see him wanting to argue with the opposition. So I don't know if that's just like because we've seen him grow up, or if I think of him as a kid in my head. Even though I'm the same age as him, I don't know how I'm thinking of him as a kid. But you get what I mean. It's like he's too young, and you're like, oh, is he really gonna scrap? But he actually does have that dark side to him, innit?
He does.
Oh my goodness, I love it, and it does speak to the recruitment and all of that. And I'm sure players that come in even after this will have some of those vibes about them. So I even look at somebody like Thomas Partey. I think he's going to be a silent leader, not necessarily somebody that wears the armband, but it's going to lead by example. And those things are really important. And it starts with Lacazette bombing as well, leading by example. 2 players that people have had a lot of questions about over the last couple of years, whether or not they added anything from an experience level. And we're seeing that they do. So that's going to rub off on the players that we have. And so I couldn't be happier, but we've come to the end of the show. I've really enjoyed myself. Thank you guys so much for being here with me. There's almost 150 of you guys watching on all platforms. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, get in the comment section. Let us know what you agreed and disagreed with. I'll be back tomorrow with a match preview for our game against Watford. So we'll be doing a little bit of that. Make sure that you guys get involved on socials. On Twitter at SheKnowsArsenal, and then on Instagram at SheKnowsArsenal TV. Got locked out of the original account. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just don't know what's going on, but follow me there as well. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.